Hello, it's Thursday, November 9th, 2017. You're watching Life Talk, and I'm Mark Crutcher.
And I'm Renee Hobbs. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got a pretty neat show.
Yes.
I think we will have anyway, something probably people haven't thought about. We reported on this on Life Talk probably 20 years ago or 15 years ago anyway. Mm-hmm. We were doing some research one time on abortionists being trained, how they get trained. And we discovered that a lot of them were being trained in the military, mm-hmm. and that there was a large military component to the abortion industry in America. And we started doing a little research and finding out that a lot of these guys that we were seeing had been trained in the military, and that the military was openly engaged in that mm-hmm. practice right now. We even found one situation. I'm trying to remember the state. When I was making the note here, I couldn't remember it. There was an actual abortion clinic on a military base that was open to the public. The public could go to this abortion mm-hmm. clinic, and it was on a military base, and it was run by military physicians.
Wow. Times have definitely changed now, though.
I hope so. I don't know that that's true. It could be. But one of the things that we discovered in this process was that one of the reasons these abortion clinics like using these military doctors is mm-hmm. that you couldn't sue a military doctor for medical malpractice. Right. And so that they were kind of insulated from that issue, and it also reduced their insurance costs because they didn't have to buy malpractice insurance for mm-hmm. a doctor. Now, Which makes sense, doesn't
right.
it? We never were able to determine whether if a civilian, somebody that was not in the military, came in and had an abortion in one of these places, whether they would be barred from seeking malpractice. Mm-hmm. We never were able malpractice
to confirm that.
We never were able to confirm that, and eventually this clinic that was on this military base was closed down. And I had a lot of interaction with a couple of base commanders called me. They were really hot about the stuff that we were saying and stuff that we were putting out there.
Because they were being exposed?
Yeah. And one of them, I remember very distinctly, got into a big argument with him. He tried to threaten me. He said if I sent any more mail out talking about this, mm-hmm. that they were going to come after me. And I said, well, you know, one of the nice things about the American form of government, mm-hmm. and he's saying I'm a lieutenant colonel or whatever in the Army or Air Force, whatever he was in. And I said, well, you know, one of the nice things about the American form of government is if you're a private citizen, you outrank a lieutenant colonel. You outrank a general because the public and the American people are who are over the military, not the reverse. This is not a military junta somewhere in some Central American country. Anyway, he and I did not hit it off too well, and he went away. But anyway, now we've come across another situation. You were contacted by a young lady not too far away from here in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Even though we now found out that she's a recovering Yankee. She was actually born in Ohio. But she seems pretty repentant.
She does,
yeah.
Yes. So, she is glad to be here, and she's been here since she was 4.
4 years old, been in Houston and then later Oklahoma. Anyway, she has her own story to tell us, and she joins us now from Oklahoma. Melissa Armstrong.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Renee. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good.
We're just fine, Melissa. Thank you for joining us today. And I know you have a very difficult story to talk about, but I'll just lay the groundwork out here, and then you can kind of fill in the details. My understanding is that when you were in the military, were you not?
Yes.
You were in the Air Force?
I was in the Air Force, and I was also, for a brief time, in the Navy.
Oh, really?
Yes.
During your military service, you were forcibly raped by another member of the military.
Yes.
And eventually you had, was it 2 abortions?
Just one.
Just one abortion. And that was
those were separate incidents.
Okay. And that abortion was a coerced one?
Yes.
So you were forcibly raped and then forced to have an abortion later on? When you were first telling us this story, why don't you just fill in whatever details you feel comfortable with, and then I have a couple of questions I want to ask you about this situation.
Sure. Well, in fact, it's been 21 years yesterday that the rape happened. It It was actually a date rape. I knew the person who did it. And unfortunately, he was not prosecuted because we had known each other for so long previously. And I don't really talk too much about it just for the fact I'm trying to keep from being accused of slander but there's evidence, obviously, medically, that substantiates what had happened to me. And then 5 years later, I was dating an active duty officer that, because he did not want to get in trouble for getting an enlisted woman pregnant, he coerced me into ending the life of our baby. And unfortunately, that happens a lot in the military. When there is an officer, an enlisted member dating, and if the woman gets pregnant, they want to hide what happened. The act that caused the pregnancy is what would cause the officer to get in trouble. It's punishable under the UCMJ. But unfortunately, the act of the abortion is not. And in fact, within VA healthcare, even regular military healthcare, you can't get treatment for post-abortion recovery. You have to seek that on your own.
Okay, now, go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to ask a question. Is abortion used to cover up sexual assault in the military? Is that common?
I believe so. It's not come out and say it just because if they did, that's that much more that the VA would have to compensate disabled veterans for PTSD.
Wow. Now, did you or did you not get pregnant from this rape?
No.
I did not.
Did not. Okay.
No.
All right. Say something that I always interject into. I think I don't like using that distinction. Rape is rape. Either it was a forcible rape or it wasn't. If it was a forcible rape, it doesn't matter if you were dating the guy. That's irrelevant. Rape is rape.
I agree.
And so I want to make sure people understand we don't make that distinction here, and I'm sure you don't make that distinction either. If somebody forces you to have sex with them against your will, that's a rape, regardless of whether you were dating the person or not. That's really irrelevant.
Well, because did I interrupt you?
No, go ahead.
Okay, because of today's show, I don't have really any military family members. I don't know a whole lot about it, and then pulling abortion into it has really opened my eyes to a whole different world here. And so I have been really researching and studying this topic, and it's amazing how the laws have changed so much going back and forth, where you can have an abortion and it's paid for by TRICARE, and then you can't, and then you can, and then you can't. And it sounds like when she got her abortion was during the Clinton administration, when he put that law back into motion where women can have an abortion.
Paid for by the government.
It's actually not paid for by the government. It's out of pocket, but they're allowed to. It's not just for rape, incest, or the health of the mother, as it is today. Those three. And even, it sounds like even women, service women that get an abortion, which rape is very high in the military, that it's not very accessible to have an abortion. They have to go off onto their own to do this. And even if they're overseas in like Japan or Germany or someplace, they have to seek it out for themselves, and it's very difficult to do, which is a blessing. But
right. What? Neither one of us obviously have been in the military. And if I had been, it would have been so long ago it wouldn't matter anyway. But Melissa, do you think that the incident of rape, because this is what Renee was kind of alluding to here, the incidence of rape in the military is higher than it is in the general population?
Personally, I think so. I mean, you look at how they have now commingled the training dormitories for basic training. When I was in basic training, I had a co-ed dorm. I was in band flight when I was at Lackland, and so the women lived in one part of the dorm, and the men lived in the other side. They lived across the hall from us, but we weren't in the same room. But if you think about this, I knew of airmen looking for and finding an opportunity to go do things.
Right.
Definitely.
No, you create that situation, you're going to have that result.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of sad to compare college-age kids and co-ed dorms, but it's almost the same.
Right.
It's
It is.
the same instances.
Right.
I mean, men and women are going to visit each other, and
And visit is a nice way of putting it, but
well,
yeah. But why do you think? Is it just that the military basically throws people together in that situation? Is that the reason you think rape is a higher incident there than in the public at a whole? Or is there
think
something in the culture, or what?
I think it's proximity. I mean, we lived, even before I got married, the first time, I lived in a dormitory that had all men except for myself and my suite mate.
I mean, you're basically asking for problems when you create that situation.
well, yeah, and when you're deployed, you're not there. I mean, you're there for a long period of time too, and unfortunately, it doesn't really matter if you're single or married. I don't think.
Now, you mentioned earlier a moment ago that your situation was apparently you were having a relationship with an officer, and you were not an officer, which means he was having a relationship with an enlisted person,
Correct.
which is strictly forbidden by the military to do that.
Yes.
If in those situations, let's just say that this situation is occurring, and that would be to me the most likely scenario because you have a different level of power there, because one person is enlisted and one person is an officer. So if you're an officer, you would probably think you have a better chance of having a sexual relationship with someone that's has a much smaller rank than you have. That would be the normal. I mean, that's why you don't allow, for example, school teachers to have sex with children, even if the children are adults. In Texas, age of consent 17, but a high school teacher can't have sex with an 18-year-old in high school because there's this disparity in power, right? That same thing would exist in the military. Now, what my question is let's say you have this situation. You think it's common for officers to have sexual relationships with non-coms? Is that what you're saying?
I think it is, but, they're not going to come out and say it because they want to save their career.
Right. Okay. Now, if that is actually happening, the most likely way that this would become known is if she gets pregnant.
Exactly.
All right. Among the women, either yourself or other women that you knew in the military that did become pregnant by someone who was in the military with them and maybe of a superior rank, do you sense that there was a coercion or a encouragement to have an abortion to keep this thing hidden?
Absolutely. I've read some stories of other women who were in the military who were in a similar situation, but it was a senior, actually commissioned officer and a lieutenant, similar situation.
Okay, here's what I'm getting at. Right over the last year or so, we've had these hearings in Congress over the problems of sexual harassment in the military. I've not heard one report from those things saying we're also looking at coerced abortion as an instrument to cover up these situations. I've not heard
And
one.
I don't think you will. It's going to take somebody who's willing to step out and say, hey, this is what's going on.
Well, you know for a fact that given the amount of grief that can be caused to a officer who's now impregnated a non-commissioned officer, a sergeant or a corporal or whoever it might be, the pressure that's on him and the things that could happen to him is going to encourage a lot of these people to put pressure on these women to have abortions.
Definitely.
That's obvious,
Right.
right?
Definitely.
Why isn't our government looking at that? Why isn't somebody out here saying, okay, if, and they're all saying that sexual harassment of females in the military is, I've heard them use the term epidemic. All right. If it's epidemic, and you know for a fact that if these guys get these women pregnant, they're going to push them to have abortions, why is nobody investigating that?
I think the problem comes down to that Roe v. Wade's been around for so long, they just want to turn blind to it. You know, it's their choice.
And, you know, the other thing that you have to think about too, Melissa, is that if you have a lot of these guys doing this and getting these women pregnant and then coercing them or forcing them or threatening them or whatever they do to make them have abortions, you also have to know that a certain number of those women are not going to want to have an abortion. They're going to do it against their will.
Sure.
Who's protecting these people?
Nobody.
I mean, we know nobody's protecting the babies. The babies are being written off and butchered by the millions.
Well, I can tell you this. This is coming from a conversation that I had with my commander at the time, from when I was in the Guard. And I wish I had been brave enough to go tell him what was going on. We had reconnected, and we visited about this particular incident that happened to me. And he told me if I had told him what was going on, he would have helped me out. As in, I wouldn't have had to have the abortion.
It's just that fear. It's that fear of coming forward and talking about it and trusting somebody to help you, I guess.
Right. And it wasn't like help in the sense of, physical support, but like in the sense of what do we do as far as military is concerned, how to, still allow me to stay in while being pregnant and having to postpone technical training, things like that.
Yeah, I mean the coercion that could be brought is enormous. I mean it's absolutely enormous. And again, I think somebody that's involved in these hearings in Congress and creating these panels and these discussions and all this with the military and bringing these military people in and making them testify and all this stuff, it is an obscenity if they're not dealing with this issue right here.
Yeah, I agree.
Babies are having to give up their lives, and women are having to kill their babies to cover up for what they're claiming is an epidemic in the United States military.
Yes.
That's true.
Well, I mean, where am I going wrong with that, Melissa? What am I saying here that's not right, or what am I missing in this equation?
You're not missing anything, Mark. It is absolutely true.
Well,
It's unfortunate.
it is.
Yeah.
Well, Melissa, I know, or I assume that you've made your peace with God over this.
Yes.
And
a year and a half after all that happened, I was very fortunate to find a Rachel's Vineyard retreat that I attended.
That's good.
And, most people will say, well, you're a Baptist. Why are you going to a Catholic retreat? Well,
didn't matter.
at that time, evangelicals weren't doing a darn thing for post-abortion recovery.
Right.
So
That's our failure, isn't it?
That's
Wow.
not your fault. That's ours.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service in the military and your husband, Brian. We appreciate all that you guys do, and all the men and women out there that are serving our country. We appreciate it so much.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sorry you had to endure this, during your military service, but I'm happy that you've now gotten your life on track again, and you got a whole bunch of kids. I was saying a while ago, you're kind of like the little old lady that lived in the shoe, but
yeah.
You got kids and got a husband and sounds like a really happy life. So God blessed you in the end anyway. But
Thank you.
But this was a difficult thing, I'm sure, for you to have to deal with. And I appreciate you having the courage just to come out here and talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not. Well, thank you, Melissa, and I'm sure we'll be back in touch with you later. May even have you back on the show at some point. And Renee is responsible now for sending you a cup, one of our Life Dynamics cups, and we'll even put some other stuff in there with it because we look at you now as a member of the team, and we thank you for joining up.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Bye-bye.
Bye.
She's a brave person, isn't she?
Yeah, she really is. And, I think this is one of these things that is going on out there that nobody outside the military knows about and nobody inside the military wants to talk about.
It's going to talk about it. Yeah, they want to cover it up, keep it hidden.
Getting swept under the rug.
Exactly. That's what
Right.
I was going to say. That's
Let
right.
me bring up another thing that you've heard me say a billion times before, and I told you this when you first came to work here. Abortion destroys everything it touches. This is another example of this. If you went out into the public, you've heard me say before, I can make all these analogies between abortion and this, and abortion and this, and abortion and this. Mm-hmm. And you go out in the public and say, okay, what's the connection between abortion and the United States military? Well, there's no connection between the abortion and the United States military. Well, but
Watch this story.
watch this story.
Yep.
There is.
Right.
And abortion bastardizes everything it comes in contact with. Every single thing.
Yep. Yes, it does.
Every single thing.
Yeah.
And we've talked about all these other issues over the years where abortion has infiltrated something and made it dirty or degraded or whatever, and this is a good example of this. Our military does not need to be degraded by this kind of activity.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
No.
No.
Well, you got anything there?
No, just lots of posts from Melissa's husband, Brian. Of course, he's going to be on watching and listening to his wife.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
That's really good.
Yep, so no.
Just like your husband watches and listens to you.
That's right, every time we're on.
It looks like he'd get enough of you at home at night.
Absolutely not.
don't
The
think
guy
he-
can't get enough of me.
Oh, please help me.
Love you, Tim.
Yep. Yeah, Tim, bless your heart. You're long-suffering Tim Hobbs. Anyway, that's all the time we have. You don't have anything else?
That's all the time we have. We are done. No, just send in your show suggestions. We would appreciate them. And just like today's show, we had Melissa on. You can be a guest on our show as well. So
Yep.
send in your show suggestion. We'll send you a mug.
And if you don't want to be on the show, you don't have to be, and we'll still send you a mug, even if you're not. We use your subject on the show. Anyway, that's all the time we have. Until next time, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops. We'll see you on Tuesday.
Happy Veterans Day.